So today's session, we have Associate Professor Robert Perrins, who is a Gates Cambridge alumnus, who is talking to us. He's also a recipient of the 2020 Fulbright Award, so it's safe to say he knows a few things about prestige scholarships. So he will be sharing his experience with the Gates Cambridge Scholarship, and then we'll have a chance to ask some questions at the end. If you do have any questions that come up throughout, feel free to pop them in the chat and I will ask them for you once Rob has shared some of his thoughts. Otherwise, we'll probably open it up to anyone who would like to ask a question if you'd like to unmute your mic at the end. So I'll now hand over to Rob. Thank you.
Carly, thank you very much for that that introduction that absolutely nobody could live up to. I just kind of want to go through a few explanatory notes on the front end here about where I want to drive this this presentation. So Carly has kind of explained that she's already provided links to videos and to a lot of the slide pack and all the info that I kind of like gave her on the front end. So I'm assuming in my delivery here that you've already been given that stuff. So what I won't do is just regurgitate all of that, all of the stuff that is just the facts, the numbers, the things that are manifestly obvious. I'll try not to kind of spend too much time on that. Instead, Carly has asked me to drill down a little more on some of the softer things and the personal perspective. So I'll try to turn up the volume on that, turn down the volume on the numbers and the basic facts, because I'm assuming that those resources are available, and I'll kind of make sure that you have all the links and everything to get to that. As she said, my name is Rob Perrins, and I'm a faculty member right here at QUT, so not too far away from where you guys are usually. So the basics, yeah, I'll kind of go through again just the highlight reel of the basics, the history of the thing, application and selection. That's usually what people want to talk about most, is how do I win this thing? A few cursory notes about scholars and alumni, and then of course a few minutes at the end for questions and answers. So this basically is the genesis story here is that this was back in 2000. There was a very sizable donation from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to the University of Cambridge. It's my understanding that at that time that was the biggest single dollop of money that had ever been given to a UK university. So that was quite a splash, quite a gesture. Just a couple of numbers I want to draw your attention to here. That there's, the scholars from 109 countries, and Australia has been represented over and over on that list. So it's almost impossible to kind of overstate how international, how diverse, and how pluralistic it is in that regard. The 50-50 gender balance, that's something that they carefully manage and monitor. And the alumni network, we've got over 1,400 alumni of the program since the inception over about 20 years ago. And all over the place. So let's talk about who's eligible. Unfortunately, if you're a UK passport holder, you are precluded from, you are not eligible for this program. And a common question that we always get is, wait a minute, what if I'm a dual passport holder? Can I, if I'm Australia and British, does that mean that I can't do that? I'm afraid so. If you have a UK passport, this makes you not able to apply for this one. The types of degrees, basically the only constraint here is that it has to be a graduate degree, so a doctorate or a master's degree. What topic? Whatever floats your boat. As long as this can make some kind of contribution to humankind and making our lives better. It could be medieval history, it could be mathematics. A lot of people are kind of, they say, well, but Bill Gates, he made his money in computer science. Does that mean that I'm going to be more favorably looked upon if I'm a computer scientist? Not at all, not even a bit. There's no age limit, and that makes this a bit of a departure from the rule book that you heard with the Rhodes Scholarship, for example. Myself, I took 5 years of working after a master's degree before I came back to do a doctorate, so I didn't even start my PhD at Cambridge until I was 30. So let that put wind in your sails. Here's how the money plays out. This statistic was from last year. So you get a living allowance of £17,500, return airfare there and back, economy class, visa costs if you had to spend any money on that kind of thing for getting over there, and of course the university and college fees. Now the obvious question, but when you look at these numbers, you say yes, but those are just numbers. Is this going to let me live in England? Yes, but just barely. So you're not going to be giggling all the way to the bank. You're not going to be turning a huge profit, but in theory, this is enough to kind of get you over the finish line. They also recognize that there's specifics. There's as many unique stories as there are GATE scholars going through the program, and so they have to be flexible with things like family allowance. You got a husband and kids that you want to bring along? Okay, they're open to that. Let's have that conversation. Do you need an extra 4 months of coverage to get just that last little bit, you know, beyond 3 years for your doctorate, just to wrap things up? Well, they can have that conversation too. So just there's wiggle room in there, and there's a bit of humanity in the process. I'd like to, more than anything else, if I could kind of draw your attention to one aspect of what they're looking for in prospective applicants. It's this, I've got the yellow star here, this 4 pillars. They want intellectual ability, they want a good academic fit with Cambridge, I'll be talking about that later, and they want to see leadership capacity and also a commitment to improving the lives of others. There's no single template, there's no archetype. There's an incredible diversity of different people there. So don't think, well, I'm not in that topic, I'm in this topic, and therefore they're not looking for that. That's absolutely not true. In the first instance, you get accepted to Cambridge, and then you kind of you get nominated by your department, and that's different from a lot of other scholarship programs. And then if you're shortlisted after the department thing, then you get invited for an interview, and hopefully you're successful. And that's how the numbers play out. I promised I wouldn't belabor the numbers because of the time constraints here. If you have specific questions about, you know, what exactly are the deadline dates for the application process, what fiddly bits of paper do I need to include in my application, all very reasonable questions. And the most efficient way to get those answers is to go to this website, www.gatescambridge.org. If you're serious about taking a look at this program, and I hope you are, then please go visit that site. I'll leave that part. Again, that's kind of like the mechanics of applying. I will draw attention to this here. One of the things that's important in your application is that it has to be shining through why you should be at Cambridge. Why didn't you do this at Stanford? Why didn't you do it at the University of Melbourne? What was wrong with University College London? There should be something in your application that speaks to that in a very direct way. You know, who exactly is at Cambridge that is a world-leading authority on the topic that you want to be wrestling with? What other special resources there? Is there a special research team, special equipment? You know, there should be something woven into the application that says, this is why this amazing question has to happen here. And just make sure that that shines through. The personal references, a lot of people just kind of have, you know, they just kind of turn the crank over and over and have like this highly automated process where they've got the same reference letters from the same people going to every institution. I would caution you against that here. I think that this is a very competitive program, as I'm sure most of them are that you're hearing about today. But they've seen that movie before. If it sounds mechanistic, if it sounds like someone just turned the handle and that there's no customizing happening here, then that they see that. They see it from a mile away. So please take the extra time and make it fit the Cambridge situation very well. I think that is obvious. What I would want to say then, I've only got a very short amount of time left to be here. One of the things I want to make clear is that don't look at this just as a slush fund for getting you through graduate school. It is so much more than that. You are going to be surrounded by this community of people that are very committed to changing the lives of other people. They're exceptionally talented, they're amazing people, and just by being in and around them, they're going to, you know, they're going to amaze you and impress you all the time. So prepare to, more than just a financing pathway for grad school, this program will change you. And you're going to meet some amazing friends for life, and it's so much more than just the funding. I think that's the right place for me to pause for much needed breath and to take a drink, and for you guys to lob any questions that you might have my way.
So once again, feel free to unmute your mic if you would like to ask a question. I'm going to get the ball rolling, but you can also pop something in the chat if you would like. So Rob, just talking about how vibrant and diverse the community is and how it's so much more than just a scholarship program, what are your highlights from your time at Cambridge, or some of your highlights?
Well, yeah, that's, boy, and I was in the very first crop of Gates Scholars, so we're kind of going back to memories from, back when the Earth was cooling. It's been a while, so, but among the highlight reel with the Gates Scholars there, we instituted this program, and now this is kind of an annual ritual that they do. It's an every year thing. As soon as the scholars arrive, so we kind of created this trip where everybody kind of goes to the Lake District, and all the Gates Scholars kind of for a few days or almost a week, they kind of go camping together at this this Scouts camp in the north of England, and they kind of just hang out together and spend a lot of time. And there's just something about being on a bus for 20 hours with somebody, and swapping campfire stories and living in cramped quarters and kind of doing that for several days, and it just it creates this long-lasting bond. So there's a real esprit de corps that survives that process, and so we did that, and they've done it every year since, and it makes for some friendships that go the distance.
Something else you mentioned was the importance of making sure you're clear about why you're choosing Cambridge and why you're a good fit. So what was your reasoning? Why was Cambridge a good fit for your study?
That's a very good question. So for me, it was a little more about the who, to be honest. So prior to going to Cambridge, I had done a master's degree at MIT in the United States. And while I was at MIT, I reached out to a faculty member at Cambridge, and I pointed out to that person. I said, "Hey, you and I are actually pursuing similar questions. We're kind of on the same line of questioning here with our research. Is there any chance that you're going to be in the Boston area in the next in a year or something?" And he said, "You won't believe this, but I'm going to be there next week." And so we went out, we had dinner, and we got along like a house on fire. And I basically came out of that evening with no option. I basically was like, yep, okay, that's the guy I'm doing my doctorate with. So for me, it was a slam dunk. And I was going to go to Cambridge even if Gates didn't happen. But lo and behold, I got a lucky break, and that worked out. That won't be everybody's story, but that was mine.
So is that something you would recommend, reaching out to people who are at Cambridge, potential contacts?
Absolutely. In fact, I would say that's an integral part of the process. Like, if you kind of wandered into your interview, a Gates interview, and you said, well, this person is in this department is perfect for this particular research topic, and then they said, well, we assume then that you've struck up a conversation and introduced yourself, and have you done those things? And if you were like, nah, not really. That, I'm not saying it would be fatal, but it wouldn't help. You need, if you need to demonstrate that you've done the due diligence, who's who in the zoo in that research area, and you have to be providing enough specificity where you leave little doubt that, okay, you know what you're talking about, and you're giving really solid reasons why that team or that person at Cambridge is the right fit for you. And I don't think that you're going to get the quality and the depth and the realness in your response if you just never spoken to that person. I mean, if they're the right fit, you probably had a phone call with them, at least a few emails.
Great. Is there any other advice you'd give along the lines of that selection criteria?
I guess my parting shot would be, don't be put off by what might look like long odds. Somebody's got to win this. It could be you. I think that's why at the risk of being too self-flagellating here, I think that the Gates people love to trot me out for these presentations, because you probably are going to look at me and go, that's a tragically flawed guy. and he got it. So there's a really outstanding chance that if this guy can do it, then you've got a shot too. And so please, by all means, I would seriously consider it, and don't be put off by the numbers. Somebody's got to win.
Great. We have a couple of questions coming through, so I'll just read them out.
Okay.
So on the same line of questioning, in trying to show how Cambridge is an ideal institution for our research topic, is it better to propose a narrow research question or frame our project in more broad terms to leave room for flexibility in our later research?
That's a little bit how long is a piece of string. You don't want to be so generic that it sounds like you're being wishy-washy and you don't know what you're talking about. I would err on the side of get specifics in there with safe in the knowledge that, are you going to have to make some adjustments to the trajectory because of hard reality? Of course, everyone knows that. I mean, and there's no harm or foul with that. Nobody locks you down on your first day in a doctorate and doesn't allow you to make changes and adjustments. So I'd say be as specific as feels appropriate. Don't, but precisely because you'll be allowed to change it later. You want to sound as knowledgeable and impressive as possible. You don't want to sound, like you're nearly agnostic about, well, I could do physics, I could do biology, frankly, I don't care. I mean, that tone, no way, that's not going to work.
Okay, does the commitment to improving the lives of others criteria have to be focused on society as a whole, or can we target it at a very specific group? So instead of helping improve access to justice for all, can it be something more like improving knowledge in a specific area? Perhaps one that is more commercial orientated rather than public interest.
Okay, that last part. So was that, can I make a proposal around how I'm going to get stinking rich? Is that what I'm hearing? That sounds like almost veiled language for that. So, there should be something, it should be mostly in step with the broad philanthropic nature of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But they're extremely relaxed about how, okay? And how does humankind get better and richer, not in an economic sense every time, but kind of in terms of quality of human life. So again, I kind of poked fun at medieval literature before. Well, a deepened understanding of medieval literature, it might not have a direct impact on curing cancer, but it might enrich our culture, so there's a lot of ways, a lot of different spins on what it takes to contribute, but the idea should be to make some kind of contribution to make other people's lives better. Let me kind of come to the first part of the question there, because there was a few layers to it about how many people do we have to impact? Do we have to be talking about topics that necessarily connect to everybody? Well, no. There could be, for example, I'm just pulling a few examples out of the air, but there's illnesses that affect very small numbers of people, but they could be disadvantaged people in faraway countries, or well, that's still very, very helpful. Does it mean that all 7.5 billion people in the world are going to benefit? Not directly, but it affects a lot of people, and it's still worth looking at.
Great. Were there any other questions?
Let me also add that this was never a limited time offer. You've got my contact details. I'm at QUT to the degree that any of us is at QUT these days. But you are all welcome if you have additional questions that you just cannot get off the Gates Cambridge website. If I can help with additional information, reach out and let me know. I'm happy to do that.